let's talk about this speed bag effect. So what is the sound of a speed bag that you are hearing? It is the sound of the bag hitting the back part, the front part, the back part. So you get this pocket type of sound. You don't even really hear the person actually striking the bag. So what is that? That is a ricochet effect. I'm using this part of my tongue, not the tip, but a little bit back from the tip first, and then I let my tongue ricochet the tip to hit, and then there's another ricochet of the thick part of the tongue again. Sounds like this. This is actually more difficult to do with just a mouthpiece in the neck. So you get like a battle. I call this a speed bag effect. I use this thing a lot. It is very effective in articulation as like just a real strong, powerful rhythmic device. Okay, that's going to take time. You're really just putting the emphasis on the first part of the attack. The padla, pa, pa, padla, 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 padla. Let's talk about double tonguing. I don't really use double tonguing very much, but I've had a lot of free time on my hands, so I've really been working on double tonguing, and for me, double tonguing is quite different from all the other tonguing because I never think about double tonguing as coming from my embouchure. I think about double tonguing coming from right down here. So let me move this neck strap out the way. I think about creating this wall of pressure right here. So this is the support structure. If you think about just blowing out of your mouth and just pressing here with your fingers like this, you can hear how that's affecting my flow of air. So I try and anchor that push from right here. All right, so it's like the bottom of the rib cage, that part that's right there, that's my anchor that I use to support double tonguing. Now, it's very important that when you're double tonguing, that you're just letting the air flow consistently instead of chopping it up. Once you stop the air, you create a little bit more back pressure, and then it starts to get a little too uneven and inconsistent. You want to think of more of a ta, the tip of the tongue, and not a ka, but more of a ga. Ta ga, ta ga. You don't want to completely interrupt the flow of air when it's coming from your throat. You want to just taga, 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 taga. So I want to increase the rate at which I'm just using the ga, making sure that I keep that flow of air. We want to keep this ga, 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 ga. So let me start. It takes time and it takes practice. For this video, I'm going to call this like a la tonguing, because this involves actually muting part of the reed in order to get like a real muted effect like this. It's very effective. I use this a lot. It's really nice to be able to have just a mouthpiece with the neck to do this, to start to get familiar with articulation, because sometimes in some notes there's a different amount of pressure that you have to manipulate in order to be able to get the reed to just simply oscillate. So taking it apart like this, we can reduce that pressure down to where it's just easier to get the mechanics of tonguing down. And this is the kind of thing I would advise you to start. I live on a really busy street. I can't take that out. Having the saxophone disassembled in this manner will allow us to be able to manipulate through this pressure so that we can understand these basic concepts. Before I pull out a metronome and all of that, I want to just get familiar with the basics of tonguing. There are two ways to manipulate tonguing. We can use the tip of our tongue or just a little bit back from the tip of our tongue. So this position here versus this position here. Okay, so what I want to do is just do that. Let's say we do 4 times with the very tip and 4 times with just a little bit behind the tip. Using the tip of the tongue can be a bit uncomfortable if you are not used to articulating this way. So being able to reduce the pressure like this can give us a good head start, so that way we don't do that articulation and then get that sour lemon face like, okay. You want to make sure that the tone is steady and that your articulation is consistent. You ultimately want to land on whichever one is the most comfortable, and eventually you want to get to where you're just using the minimal amount of tongue possible. So that way you can increase speed and control. I have this tuner here. This is called Tonal Energy Tuner. This thing is pretty fabulous, but I want to make sure that my intonation is staying the same throughout my flow of air and throughout every part of my articulation. So I'll give you an example like this. Don't worry about what the actual intonation of the pitch is. What's important is that it's consistent. Okay? All right, let's move on. Okay, this also has a metronome feature that's on it here. You want to use this with headphones so that way you're really locked into the time. And then you can just do quarter notes, eighth notes, eighth note triplets, 16th notes in a manner similar to something like this. As far as embouchure goes, I use a lip out embouchure, which is instead of rolling the lower lip over the teeth, I roll my lower lip a lot further outward. Instead of having it cupped in, it's a lot more out. This alleviates the amount of overall pressure that you are applying to the mouthpiece. Relieving this pressure is a lot like making a car weigh less. It will improve every performance attribute of the automobile. In the same way, using this lip out embouchure, alleviating all this excess pressure that you're putting around here, using that lip out will increase every performance attribute of your playing. So when I articulate, I'm always thinking light, 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 with as little obstruction as possible. Having that amount of pressure there is just an obstruction. Okay. One of the big advantages of just having the mouthpiece with the neck is that I can easily adjust the position that the mouthpiece is actually in my mouth. I'll just play a note and you can hear how it changes with adjusting this angle. You can hear how I'm getting a lot more sound by having this at a different angle. So I can adjust this to get the kind of resistance that I need in order to be able to do the kind of articulation that I'm going for. Now, in general, when you're learning, you want to be able to just get it familiar, and then later you can adjust it to where you're getting the biggest sound. So for me, a lot of this stuff, I'm really just at the point where I can get the most sound using the correct angle. Okay, let's move on. The last one I want to go over is false tonguing. It actually sounds like you are articulating a lot more than what you actually are. And it helps to really be able to sell that effect by actually articulating in a very precise and very specific way, and often. So that way, when you back off of it, it's like the listener still hears certain articulations happening.